me to make a presentation to you because I have written a book and I've managed a lot of associations. I know quite a bit about associations, probably not as much as I would like to know, but I still know a lot. Let me ask a question first. How many executive directors are in the room? Oh, good. How many maybe assistant or chief administrative officers? Chief financial officers? Okay. How about director of IT? Any IT directors? And any meeting planners here? You're all meeting planners, you know that. That comes with the job, right? Well, I'm going to try to give you a little bit of an overview of how to interact with a board from a director's or an executive director's standpoint. So you have to maybe put yourself in some different shoes while you're going through this presentation. Also, this presentation, usually when I give it to boards, is about 3 to 4 hours long. So I'm doing the FedEx version, the very quick version. And then I'm going to talk to you about Black Swan later on. That speaks for itself. And by the way, you don't have to take notes. This presentation, Affiniscape has it. It'll be put into their resource center, so you'll be able to get a copy of it. And I think that Ginger's going to send everybody a copy who attended the conference anyhow. So, one of my heroes, anybody know who that is?
Twain.
What's that?
Twain.
Mark Twain. I've got one copy left. This is the last copy, so you win this copy.
I'm new to associations, and
There you
my
go.
first big board meeting, if that's right. So
Oh, good.
That's an easy read book, too. I read it on a plane in less than 2 hours.
That's the last hardcover because we're in production now for the third printing, and it's going to be available soft cover within about 2 weeks, and it's also available in almost any kind of e-book format that you want, probably in the middle of January. So we're catching up to the world. But the reason why I like Mark Twain is because he said this. I'm not sure you can read this, but I'll read it for you. He said, "Always do right. This will gratify some people and astonish the rest." What's amazing about that is he said that in 1901 when he was a reporter for the New York Times Mercury. That was the name of the newspaper before they dropped off the Mercury. But it's kind of a good guiding principle. If you always do right, guess what? You never have to apologize for anything. You don't have to make up any excuses. And being on a board or working with a board, if you always do right, you won't get into trouble. A little bit of background. How many nonprofits are there? The IRS is changing their terminology. They're going to start calling them the tax-exempt organizations. They're going to get rid of nonprofit because there's too much confusion about nonprofit. There's many people that think nonprofit is a business model when it's not. It's just a tax status. Actually, if you have an association, you need to make money, right? You can't be nonprofit, otherwise you go out of business. But just to give you some information, just over 20 years ago, there was 650,000 nonprofits, and that's what their revenue was. In 20 years, 20 short years, it grew to 1.2 million with $2 trillion in gross revenue. That's a big number, and trust me, the IRS is after that money. And if you notice, or if you know that the Form 990, that if any of you have come in contact with, especially the CFO, it was changed a couple of years ago. And that was after many years of public comment and congressional inquiry on how they're going to change it and how they're going to capture a lot of this. Heretofore, a lot of the little ballet clubs or softball leagues or little leagues, if they had less than $25,000 in gross revenue, they didn't have to report it. Now everybody has to report it. Everybody. If you have less than 25 or 50,000, you use a postcard, but you still have to report it. Very interesting. The government's coming after that money. You have my book. It's called The Perfect Board. Somebody asked me, "Where's the perfect board?" Well, I say every time I pass Holy Redeemer Cemetery, there it is. Got to have some fun, you know. I'm going to go through this and give you a responsibility checklist of what a board member should do. And if you're working for a board, or if you're working for an association, it's not a bad idea to adopt these because this is what the board's going to do. You should have a vision. You have to be a visionary. You have to be conversant in governance. You've got to know about governance. You have a fiduciary responsibility. And then finally, you have to help the board develop policies. Very simple. Now, one of the things I talk about a lot of times is the boards tend to get mired in a lot of the minutia. And my goal and your goal, if you want to be strategic with your board and really help your board get places, is to teach them to be visionary. What's that mean? That means to be more dynamic. Look to the future and not the past. How many of you have seen the board, look at what they did yesterday instead of what they should do tomorrow? The board should always be focused on what can we do better. This conference, you've been here for a couple of days now, and almost all of it is forward thinking, isn't it? What are we going to do now? What are we going to do for our associations later? What are we going to do for them next month? How are we going to make that website and all that member interaction better? That's what we need to do with boards. Sometimes, as I say, boards get mired in the past. As much as possible, the board should delegate and pass off. All those things are going to be given to committees and to staff. The board should not be in the daily operations of running the association, such as trying to figure out whether we should have sliced cucumbers on the canopies or what color the stationery should be. Those are all decisions that should be relegated to the operations people, meaning it's usually the executive director. And if it's given to the executive director, that executive director should have the power to hire and fire all the staff. The board should not be involved in those kinds of decisions. You have to involve everyone. Again, using this conference as a model, Adam and Affiniscape is involving everyone. Have you noticed how many Affiniscape people are here? They're not just coming with the top 3 or 4 people from Affiniscape. They've got everybody here. Yeah, they're local, but still, think of that feeling. This is what you have to do with your associations as well. You have to involve everyone. Let some of the staff go to the meetings so they can meet the members, so they can meet the board members as well. It's a fantastic experience. And as far as the association is concerned, you have to involve everyone so they get to know and meet everyone. The dynamics of an association is changing. You can't just accept the fact that you send out your dues notices that people are going to automatically show up at a meeting and pay their bill. It's just not going to happen anymore. You've got to show value, and I think they've talked about that as well during this conference. And finally, how many of you would jump in your car and just drive to Los Angeles? You would. You would.
I live there, so.
Okay, so you might know the way. You might know the way. But for most people, what's your name?
Raphael.
Raphael. Everyone else but Raphael. Normally what you would do is get a map or go on the internet and search the routes and figure out where you're going to stop. Because you're not going to go there probably in one day. You're going to stop somewhere, maybe in Albuquerque or Santa Fe or somewhere along the line. And you might want to take in a couple of sites. So you have a map. You have a plan. How many in this room, the association that you're working with right now, how many of you have a strategic plan? About 60%. That's not bad. That's not bad. Usually it's about 40%. So that's good. You got to have a plan. And this is where the vision comes in. You got to have to help that board develop that plan. Find out where they want to go. Because if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there, right? And you might wind up someplace you don't really want to be. That's why it's important. And you have to do this. You have to do this in your personal life too. Have you noticed? It's a little confusing out there. So you got to have a plan. You got to have priorities. That's supposed to be funny. You all know what the mission of your association is. Everybody knows it, right? Do you know that now in the new 990, which I just mentioned a little while ago, well, let me put it this way. On the old 990, the mission statement was the last thing that was put on the form. Now it's the first thing, and then they repeat it again on the 4th page. So the IRS is quite firm about the fact that you have to have a mission. And you've got to have it in writing and it has to be understood. Because what they say is if you don't have a mission, then maybe you're taking other people's money and not using it according to the purpose of why that organization was formed. So that's why you have to have the mission. Now what about a mission? Everybody says, well, gee, that's really complicated. But a mission doesn't have to be complicated. In fact, it's got to be very brief, right? And it should be very clear. It should be easy to understand, right? And it should be easy to say. I don't know how big your mission statement is, but I hope it's like this one. That's a fantastic mission statement. It says a lot, doesn't it? The Junior League in Baltimore, I don't have a slide for this one, but the Junior League in Baltimore has one that says, women making a better Baltimore. That's a fantastic mission statement. Just very simple, easy to say, easy to memorize, and easy to communicate to other folks, because you have to communicate that mission statement to other people as well. Okay. As a leader of your group, or as a prospective leader of your group, this is probably the key question that you want to ask, especially in today's world. What are we all about? How's our world changing? Is this thing changing our lives? Unbelievably so. It's teaching us a different way to communicate with our members. In fact, we were talking this morning in a meeting that what we're discovering is that when people use these phones and you send them a message, they tend to only read the 2 or 3 lines that are actually in the window. They don't scroll down and read the rest of the message. So in other words, you almost have to communicate with them in 2 or 3 lines what you're trying to get across to them. And sometimes that's difficult to do in 2 or 3 lines, or maybe 4 lines as an additional one. But if you don't do that, people will not respond to you in the way you think they should. So it's changing the way we're thinking. And by the way, anytime you have a question, comment, if I'm wrong, right, or you need to know something, ask me. Here's your duties as a board member, and if you're not a board member, this is the duties of your board, what they have to do. Number 1, loyalty. Loyalty means that you wear the hat of the association. Has anyone ever heard that expression before, that you wear the hat of the association? You actually are wearing a hat, a different hat for every activity that you're in. You have a family hat, you have a church hat, you have a school hat, you have an outside hat, you have an inside hat, you have an organization hat. And what that means is that when you're with that association and you're working for them, you're on that board performing duties for them, you're wearing their hat. You are responsible to them, you're loyal to them. That means we don't have any parking lot conversations after the meeting. Anybody ever have any of those? Gee, those never happen, do they? Care. The courts hold that you're on a board of directors, that you exercise reasonable care that an ordinary person would use in the performing your function as a director. Reasonable care that an ordinary person would use. You're responsible for all their equipment, all their belongings, their finances, and everything else. And you're expected to use reasonable care in decisions you make, which means that you're responsible for doing some homework. You have to know the issue. It's not good enough to sit there and say, I didn't know. I'm sorry, I didn't know about that issue. You have to inform yourself. You have to take that upon yourself. So it's not just a matter of signing on as a director and saying, I'm going to put this on my resume. You really have to work when you're on the board. And then obedience. This is not dog training. You have to be obedient to the U.S. Constitution and all federal laws and regulations, your state constitution and all state laws and regulations, and all local laws and regulations, your articles of incorporation, your bylaws, your policies, and any other regulations you may have within your association. Sounds like a lot, isn't it? Say, holy, I have some people that have come to me and said, it's too much. I don't want any part of being on the board. It's too much work. I gotta know too much. And that's good that the person says that, because we'd rather not have that person on the board if they've already made that commitment that they don't, or that they cannot make that commitment in time and energy. And by the way, a good thing to have is a commitment form. I don't have a slide up here for it, but a commitment form. And this is for any organization that you're in. Maybe you're in the PTA or you're in some other organization. A commitment form clearly states what is expected of each person in that organization or as a director. In other words, we're going to have 3 meetings a year. One of them's going to be out of state, and you're expected to pay for your own travel expenses. Or we have 6 meetings a year. Or we have 6 meetings and we have 6 teleconference calls, 1 every month. If you have these commitment forms and then the person signs, because we find that when somebody signs, it's like a contract, they say, oh, okay, this makes sense, I'm going to commit to this. Guess what? Then they participate. But when you don't have that commitment form, a lot of times they say, well, I never knew what was involved. I never knew I had to pay for my own travel expenses. I thought the association picked that up. So a commitment form is a good thing to have. And all 3 of those together make a commitment to the association that they serve. Policies. That's the key question of a policy. A policy is below the bylaws of an association. Policies should represent a prescribed course of action for something that arises. You want policies for sexual harassment, whistleblower, credit card usage, internet usage, email usage. You can go on and on. There's depending upon the depth and breadth of your association, there could be policies for just about anything. But what they do is they help relieve the pressure off of staff and off of the directors, because now they know what to do when they are faced with that problem. If you look on my book, what's your name in the back?
Aaron.
Aaron. The foreword is by Bob Harris. Anybody ever hear of Bob Harris? Mm-hmm. Oh, we got a couple people. Bob Harris runs the not-for-profit center out of Tallahassee, Florida. And I'm going to pass this around to you. He sells this book, but he has a lot of other information on his website. And here you go. And I bring his name up because he's probably got about 1,000 items that you can use in the performance of your job, and it's all free. There is no charge. He's totally open source. He was open source before open source became open source. And this book he sells, though, I'm not sure of the exact price, but he has other sample policies there, and I would encourage you to go there. I see, from my perspective, there was no sense for me to create the same things that he had, so I chose to just use his and refer people to him. Now, I understand that a lot of this stuff is going to be on the Affiniscape Resource Center in the coming months, so that's going to be a great asset for you to go to. And I mean, he's got checklists. One of his best things that he has on there is 101 things I've learned since I got in the association business. You can imagine what that was like, huh? So I encourage you to visit that. But a policy, is it written? It has to be written. You just can't have word-of-mouth policies. It's got to be written. I think Penn State may be facing some of these issues. Policies, here, I'll give you a good example. In our company, we have a policy when we bring someone on, they sign a statement about credit card usage, that they're going to, pay back any, should they leave the company, they're going to pay back any money that they've got outstanding on the credit card, or if they have any personal charges on the credit card. Well, we had a person who left the company just recently, and Southwest Airlines changed their policy, which means we have to change ours, and I'll tell you what it is. In the past, if someone left your company, we could call Southwest, and that money would be credited back to the company credit card. Now Southwest says, if you allow somebody to use your credit card, your company credit card, or even your personal credit card, that ticket is bought in their name. They now own the ticket. And if it's a refundable ticket or a non-refundable ticket, it goes into their bank, not your bank. Interesting. Knowing that most airlines follow each other, that means the other one's going to do the same. So now we have to have a new credit card policy on how we're going to address that. We haven't even figured out how that's going to work yet, but we have to have a policy. And you have to review your policies and update them when these things happen, because if you don't, you're going to get stuck. You will be stuck. And then, of course, it's got to be communicated. You've got to let the people know that you have these policies out there. Many associations are putting their policies on their websites. It's kind of boring reading, but maybe you can put it back in an archival section where not, I mean, your members aren't going to probably go there unless they really have a need or they have a problem. One of the things that get a lot of associations in trouble, and we're going to address this a couple times, is resources. Associations like to respond to their members. Members call up and say, can we do this? Can we have another seminar? Can we print a book? Can we publish a book? Can we offer this? Can we offer that? And usually the board says, yeah, let's do that because the members want it. Well, guess what? A lot of times it's not that many members that want it. And you go and spend all this money and this time and effort, and it doesn't support itself. The program or the activity doesn't support itself. And you've wasted all that time and effort. I encourage associations and directors, especially directors, take a look at what your formulas are. Don't go out and start spending money unless you have enough to take care of what you want to do. Here's a good simple formula, and I'll show it in another form a little bit later on. If your available resources don't equal the program and services and vice versa, then it's not going to work. Just like your household budget. Yeah, you might want to go to Disney World this year, but it's going to cost you what? If you have family of 4, tickets and all that, probably going to cost you about $2 grand. You don't have $2 grand in the bank account, you're not probably going to go. You don't have the available money to go. Good question for the board to ask to be effective. What do we have to do? What do we have to do to make sure this association is successful and effective? These are open-ended questions. They don't have answers. These are questions you want to have a strength position in the board. Go and ask this question to the board at their meeting. You're going to see a lot of blank faces. They may not know the answer, especially if they don't have a plan. Even if you have plans right now, some of you may have plans. Are you tracking the progress of those plans? How are you doing it? Setting up mileposts and check marks along the way? If you're not, it's not going to get done. Only you as the association can measure what success means to you, but you have to have it written down. In our trip to Los Angeles, our success would be we arrived at Los Angeles safe and sound. But what's the success measure for your association? What are you trying to accomplish? What are you trying to achieve? Where are you going? And that's the key point there. We mentioned fiduciary responsibility earlier, and my financial person back there will understand. In an association world now, the nonprofit tax-exempt arena, there's no longer a balance sheet. This is a financial statement of financial position. That's what it's called now. So, it's the same thing. It's just called something different. This is the way the world works, and this is the way the accountants set it up. This is what the IRS accepts. The IRS wants this. They want it to say statement of financial position. By the same token, the old income statement is thrown out, and you have the statement of activities. If you know this kind of jargon and you go into your board meeting and the other directors don't know it, they're going to say, wow, Harry's really smart, or Susie, woo, how's she know this stuff? This is important. It seems trivial, but it is important because it will tell them that you know what you're talking about. And by the way, you don't have income in a tax-exempt or a nonprofit organization. You have revenue. And you do not have profit. You have surplus. Different terms. They kind of mean the same, but they're different. And that's what you got to know. And then, of course, you have to have an annual operating budget. It still surprises me that I run into some clients who, let's say it's March of 2012 and they're working on their 2012 budget. I said, what happened last fall? Oh, we don't ever do it until we're into the year. It's the same thing about the roadmap and the plan. How can you have a plan if you're working behind? How many executive directors were there? Okay, this is a trick question. How many of you have annual performance reviews? Oh, one. I don't know why it is, but in the association arena, we seem not to want to do an analysis of our chief staff executive. And by the way, the chief staff executive, CSE, president, president, executive director, executive vice president, chief staff officer, chief staff executive. What else? We got the chairman. Any other titles?
Chief executive officer.
Yeah, chief executive. So there's a bunch of titles, but I just say chief staff executive, okay? That's the head person of that association. Can you believe that? And if you're in that position, you should be demanding it. You should be telling your board, hey, come on, review me. Tell me if I'm strong. Tell me if I'm weak. Tell me where I need improvement. If I'm weak and I need education, then help me get the education so I become a better person for you. But guess what? Here's what you get to do. You get to tell them, and I don't have a slide for it. Board, you have to do a self-assessment on yourself too, because none of you people are perfect. You may not want to say it that way, but have them do it. Now, ASAE, Board Source, and I think there's one other organization that have self-assessment kits that you can buy. I think ASAE's is like $750 or $900, something like that. And you can have the board do the evaluation, and ASAE will grade it. That means that you won't be involved in grading it, and certainly you don't want the board to grade it themselves. So you have those two pieces of information that are very, very critical to running that association. Performance appraisal for the CSE and a performance appraisal for the board. What do you think? Good idea? And it's cheap. What's the most expensive thing in your organization?
Their salary.
What?
Their salary.
Whose salary?
The CSE.
Their salary, but people in general. Personnel is your most expensive item for any organization, whether it's an association, a church, a company. Personnel is always your biggest line item. But yet associations seem to not want to do this. I'm not sure. Maybe it's the board mentality. I mean, I've seen this over and over. Anybody hazard a guess why they won't do it?
Afraid of a bad review?
You mean from the board? From the board doing it on the exec? Yeah, that could be. Maybe they're afraid of what the truth is. I actually have seen the CSEs, Association Executive Directors. I know that the board did not want that person to be leading that association, but no one had the guts to tell that person. So as a result, they changed the whole association and wrote new job descriptions, and his job was no longer there. And they spent in excess of $1 million to do that. And that was done in 1991. And I got the case study for you, man. It's amazing. They did not want to fire. Yes?
I think also the reason they don't do it is because a lot of times your board changes from year to year. And so you have people rolling off and new people coming in. And so it's hard for them to assess, unless you do it at the very tail end of the year. It's hard to assess in 1 year, if you're new, what all that executive director actually does. And
That's an excellent point, the turnover on the board. But,
in the committee chairs and all.
but there's still enough people that could do that. And then if you had another one the next year, and another one the next year, after 3 years, you'd have pretty much a track record if that person was good or not for that association. And come on, we all know it. We live in life. Not all positions are going to work out. Just, yes?
Well, a lot of times too, some organizations, their boards get so large that they're really not engaged boards. They're just sort of board members in name only. And so it becomes a question of how engaged are they and how much do they really want to be involved in the day-to-day management of an organization. And that's why they hired the senior
That's an
person.
excellent point.
And then it just becomes, they just become complacent. And unless you've got a really engaged, even if it's just the executive committee that has clear expectations of what they want that executive to do, they're volunteers. They may not want to be that responsible.
That is fantastic, because it's true. I know of an association, just a minute, I know of an association that has 2 representatives for every state and territory in the United States. That's their board. Plus they have, I think it's either 12 or 15 elected people that are also on the board at large who comprise their officers. That's a board of what, 120? How in the hell do they do anything?
That's not a board.
You're
In these reviews, would you recommend that they be a 360 review and include perspective from the staff that work below, or is that something that's not necessary?
I think that's a great idea. I think however you can get data back to evaluate that person, because the board, in fact, that's a pretty good point. The board is not working with that individual every day. So maybe some staff input would be good, but you got to be careful of the lynch mobs too. Whoops.
Yeah.
Good points. Yes?
As well as I think the membership should be involved in the review of the board via survey.
Oh, you mean of
The
the
membership
board?
itself.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So that they can gauge what's the board, in order to engage your membership, to be more proactive in the association business.
And you know, you can drop those kinds of questions in on any kind of evaluations that you
Right.
send out on meetings or other services
Survey
you perform.
monthly.
You can drop in a couple of questions and get a good survey person. Don't let your clerks do it. Get a good survey person. There's some great survey people out there in the association industry who can help you craft correct questions to get the right stuff back. That's a good point
And I
too.
think committees should be also reviewed and performance evaluation as to how effective they are and are they still leading the mission.
I know Adam talked to you about The Race for Relevance, the book that's out by Harrison Curver and Mary Byers. It just came out in June. If you haven't read that book, get that book. It kind of stirs the pot. It's available through ASA. It's also available on Amazon.com. And I do not collect a commission for Harrison or Mary. But one of their points, well, they make 2 key points in there, well, actually 3. One is they say all boards should be reduced to 5, and they all should be competency-based and not based on because Susie's a nice person and John is a nice guy, and it was his turn. That shouldn't be it. It should be competency-based. Number 2, that all committees should be sunsetted, and each committee, preferably annually, has to justify its existence. And number 2, you have to have a competent CSE, and they should be, they should be sought after, and you should get it the best person you can get, and that they should be reviewed. The performance should be reviewed. Get that book. That's a pretty good book.
It was Race for what?
It's The Race for Relevance.
Okay, relevance.
And I think they're going to put a chapter or 2 of it on this resource center for Affiniscape. That'd be great. This is one of my famous quotes. Not mine. I didn't make this, but this is what I like. You ever run into that? Gee. This is the one I like to put up on the door when I had teenagers. Put up on my teenager's door, right? But this is who said it. Anybody know who that is?
John Wood.
Yeah. John Wooden said that. He passed away last June. Had he made it to October, he would have been 100 years old. Unbelievable. But he did something I don't think will ever be repeated. He won 10 NCAA men's basketball championships, and 9 of them were in a row. Don't think it can ever be done. And all his players wore ties, no earrings. Pretty magnanimous guy. Bring up a concept of nonprofit, the paradox of nonprofit governance, and this is by Mark Light from the Strategic Board. What is the role of the board in one word? Anybody tell me? It's on the screen.
Governance.
Governance, right. They're to govern the association, to lead the association. What's the role of the executive director? How's that? To lead the association, maybe?
And execute.
Yeah, but also the lead, right? Maybe. Guess what? Don't we have this?
Oh, yes.
Isn't it built in? This is what Mark says in his book. You have built-in conflict from the get-go. You're going to have it. The board's going to fight against the CSE, and the CSE is going to fight against the board. Hopefully you can resolve these issues. But you see it happen in corporations all the time, don't you? Wow. And in government. Here's my solution to that problem. The equation of expectations. If, now, Adam took up some of my time. If you can have the board of directors knowing what's expected of staff, and staff knowing what the board of directors expects of them, guess what? You're going to be happy. Make a bucket list so there's no confusion. Often what happens too, this is this resource I got back to. Resources have to equal the programs and services and vice versa. You can't go out here to Whole Foods with $75 in your pocket and buy $500 worth of groceries. It won't happen. Yes?
Your first equation, where do you have your CEO fit? On both sides of the equation?
No. He's on the other side. Let me
Part of
take
the
it back.
staff.
Yeah, part of the staff.
Okay.
Because he or she may not know as well. By the way, I'm glad you said he, because Compass Point and the Annie B. Casey Foundation did a study a couple years ago. And do you know what the profile of the executive director of the average U.S. nonprofit organization is? I know I'm going to update this 5 years. Anybody have a guess who it might be?
Middle-aged white guy.
Huh?
Middle-aged white guy.
That's what most people say. Actually, it's a white woman, Caucasian woman, who now is 62 years old, who's underpaid, who works for the cause. That's the average. She works for the cause. Now, guess what's going to happen in a couple of years when this baby boomer thing keeps moving through and she doesn't want to do it anymore? How many people are going to work for the cause? How many people are going to work for less than they deserve? Not going to happen. We're going to have a shortage. So you people in the association industry, your wages are going to go up in a couple of years because you're going to be free agents. There'll be more associations that need you. Just a side point. But anyhow, this is what happens with a lot of boards, right? The dreams. Oh, God, we can do that. It's easy. Let's do it. Come on. It doesn't cost that much. I have been witness to so many books and periodicals and magazines and whatever else you want to call them, manuals that are going to be bestsellers. Oh, Cal, come on, we got to do that. And you print this thing, and it's a big book, and you sell 10 copies, or you sell 100 copies, and you don't even pay for the printing bill. It happens all the time. Make the board substantiate it. Make them go out and do a study on it. You can read that quote. I love getting up in the morning in my neighborhood. I got 2 cardinals out there that just sing away like crazy. But I also got robins, and I got some bluebirds, and I got some crows, and I got a hawk that really makes a lot of noise. And that's what you should have with your board. Here are the some of the leadership characteristics. And you look at these and say, wow. And I'll let you read those. They're going to be on your, when you pick up a copy of this. This is some person, isn't it? Now, how are you going to find that person? That's how you find them. You do a matrix. How else are you going to find them? If you think about the race for relevance as one example, this is an example, Bob Harris is an example. You go out and you actually find people to fill these slots. Why shouldn't you have a financial person on your board? Why shouldn't you have, doesn't mean you have to have a lawyer on your board, but maybe somebody that knows a little bit about law, association law. Association law is not criminal law, so you may not want a criminal lawyer in there. But maybe somebody with PR or marketing experience, that'd be nice to have on the board. And I've got up there strategic thinker. Maybe that person doesn't fit the role, but gee, you know, he's got this way of looking at things, or she has a different perspective. I'd love to have her on the board. That's what you should be looking for. And you do it for the people that are already there. You can analyze them, and then you can also analyze your prospects. Or you can hire the face reader. Anybody ever hear of the amazing face reader who lives in Fort Worth, Texas? He's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Go get him. Perspective. See, Adam took about, what, 5 minutes of my time? 7 minutes of my time? So we're going to have to run over a couple minutes. Anybody know what that is? What's that? Well, it's up in Alaska. What do you think that is? Is that sunrise or sunset? It's a sunset. Okay. Everybody, where does the sun set? Tell me where you think the sun sets. The west? West? West?
If you're in Alaska, it doesn't necessarily set.
What's that?
If you're in Alaska, it doesn't always necessarily.
She's a bright one. If I had an extra book, give me your card and I'll send you one of the new books. She's right. Sun never sets.
Not in the summertime.
It never sets.
Ever.
Never.
Never?
No, because the Earth
It's rotating.
is rotating around the sun. So the sun never sets. It's perspective, right? Now I'm going to tell you a little bit about one of my favorite subjects, and this is the black swan. Anybody read Nassim? His name just escaped me. But anyway, he wrote the black swan. I'll get it for you. Where is my prop? Hang on a second. My prop is right here. This is a black swan. I mentioned Penn State. Penn State rethinks its emphasis on football. Let me tell you real quickly about the black swan, and we'll get back to that. In the 1300s, 1400s, 1500s, 1600s, 1700s, in Europe they had an expression, kind of similar. Once in a blue moon, you ever heard that? Once in a blue moon? A lot of people say, oh man, once in a blue moon never happened. Well, actually, blue moons do happen. It's when you have 2 full moons in the same month, right? You all know that. Fantastic. Great trivia question. Well, in Europe in those days, and in Africa, and I guess where else? In Asia, in Russia, they had an expression. The expression was, well, that'll happen when we see a black swan. You ever hear this story? This is unbelievable. Because all they had in Europe and Asia and Africa were white swans. Everybody said, well, you'll never see a black swan. Guess what happened? They discovered Australia. And you know what they found in Australia? Black swans. So Nassim took this idea and he developed this book around it. And as a result, he says the black swan is something out of the realm of our expectations, right? Nobody ever thought one existed. What else? Extreme impact when they found out of it. Oh my God, there are black swans. You can't use that expression anymore. Because you can't ever use once in a blue moon, really. Well, I guess you could. But. And then this one. I love this terminology. What the hell is retrospective predictability? Isn't that neat? You know what that is? Hindsight is 20/20. Right? What this means is it's something that really impacted us. And now that it's impacted us, we look back and we say, we should have figured that out. Right? True. Here's a perfect example. Read that. Can anybody guess who might have said that?
The captain of the Titanic.
You're good. You are very good. In 1907, 5 years before it happened. By the way, that was the biggest ship he ever commanded. It was the last ship he commanded, too. But he had only commanded smaller ships. He did not have experience with such a long liner. But here's a quick personal exercise. Okay? Think about all the things that have happened to you. Let's see. Candace, what's your husband's name?
Kyle?
Kyle. Now, when you were 16 or 18 years old, did you say, I'm going to meet Kyle one day and we're going to get married and have a family?
I'm a bad example. I've known my husband since we were 14.
Uh-oh, there's one.
Once in a
Okay.
blue moon.
Once in a blue moon. Where'd you go to school?
Stockbridge High School in Georgia.
Okay, but are you doing what you thought you would be doing?
No.
How many people are doing exactly what they thought they were going to do when they graduated high school or college? How many people knew, well, you knew when you met your husband or your wife that that was the person for you, but did you plan it? Isn't that a black swan event? Fantastic impact. Changes your life. And when you look back upon it, you say, you know, when you put it all together, it did kind of fit, didn't it? It's amazing. Kind of interesting concept. Real quickly, because I got a couple slides and then we'll get out of here. He also has this which I love. Platonicity. What this is, and we have so many board members that fit this description. Don't you think? They think they know more than they really know. And they'll tell you they know more than they know. Just a couple more here. Here's what happened. Anybody ever read the Abilene Paradox? I've got that in my book about the Abilene Paradox. This is where the 6 people get in a car every Sunday afternoon. They drive from Dallas to Abilene to go have dinner. And in the end, they find out none of them like each other. The car was not air conditioned, so it was an unpleasant ride. And none of them liked the restaurant. But they did it because they were together. It's called group dynamics. How many times you get maybe caught up with a group of people, you say, why am I doing this? But you do it anyhow because you don't want to be left alone. You want to be seen as the outsider. Powerful, powerful in a board situation. It can change the way a board reacts. And then this one, clearly, dues. Our revenue depends on the continuous efforts of sending out that dues invoice every year. We need that money. Why aren't we thinking differently? I know someone else was talking about changing it from dues to value, now from value back to dues. Maybe that's a new way of thinking. And then finally, you have to adjust the black swans. You cannot predict them. Not only is Penn State on the front page of USA Today, I mean, these people are just bleeding up there. They're also on the front page of the sports section. 2 hits. That's a black swan. It's a big black swan. And when they look back at this, it might be a year or two, they're going to be able to see that maybe there were some things they could have done differently and that they may have seen this had they done those things differently. And all I'm saying is that that's what you have to do in your own personal lives, and that's what you have to do with your board. You have to look at things a little bit differently because there's a black swan around the corner. I'm going to tell you, the FAA, hey, what's going to happen with the FAA? Yesterday, what, the guy gets arrested for drunk driving on the wrong side of the road in Northern Virginia? You think the FAA's in good shape right now? Whoa, holy smokes, that's a black swan. Well, yeah, we knew it would happen if you maybe didn't drink too much and drive on the wrong side of the road. But anyhow, that's my hour. This is written by my last quotation by Robert Louis Stevenson. It is said that he wrote this where now exists Spyglass Golf Course out in Carmel, California, and it sits on the number 3 hole that overlooks the Pacific Ocean, and that's where he wrote Treasure Island. So it's kind of a special place, and I really enjoy that because I do find a lot of people in my travels and a lot of honest, good people. And I thank you for allowing me to share this a little bit of the day with you, and hope you enjoy it. And if you need any information, they'll have my contact information. Call me, write me, or whatever you want. And that's it.